The Whispering Lake. Chapter 1. The Cabin. The road narrowed the deeper they drove into the forest. Emma pressed her forehead against the window, watching tall, spindly pine trees blur past. The late afternoon sun hung low behind the canopy, streaking the interior of the truck with orange light. Dust rose in thin clouds behind the wheels, and the forest felt unnervingly quiet, as if it were holding its breath. "This is the middle of nowhere," Emma muttered. Daniel gave a small laugh from behind the wheel, though it didn't sound entirely genuine. "Yeah, Grandpa always did like his privacy." Privacy? That was one way to describe it. Their grandfather's cabin, now legally theirs after his death, sat on the edge of Blackthorn Lake, a place she'd only ever heard mentioned in passing when she was a kid. Their father had refused to visit. Her mother had refused to talk about it at all. Emma shifted in her seat as a sign flashed by on the right. Blackthorn Lake, 2 miles. The letters were faded, almost consumed by moss. Someone had scratched something crude into the wood below. "The lake remembers." She turned to Daniel. "Did you see that?" He nodded. "Yeah, just some dumb local thing." But Emma wasn't so sure. There was something about the sign that made her uneasy. The way the carved letters seemed deep, like they hadn't just been scratched, but gouged. The road turned into gravel, then into a path of packed dirt. The trees thickened until the sky itself was little more than a gray blur above. It felt like driving into the mouth of something alive. Finally, the trees parted, and there it was. The cabin stood at the edge of the water, slouched like an old man leaning on a cane. Weather-beaten wood peeled away in strips, and its roof sagged in the middle. A rickety dock stretched out over the lake, pale and glassy under the setting sun. Beyond it, the water was dark, too dark, like an oil slick. Emma stepped out of the truck, and the air hit her immediately, colder than it should have been for early autumn. The silence was heavy here. No birds, no insects, just a faint lap of water against the shore. "It's creepier than I expected," she admitted. Daniel grabbed their bags from the truck bed and forced a grin. "It's just old. We'll clean it up, stay a few weeks, fix what we can, and sell it. Easy." She followed him up the creaking porch steps. Her boots made the wood groan, and something small scurried under the house. The front door key, rusted and stiff, fought the lock before finally clicking open with a sharp snap. The inside smelled of damp wood and old smoke. A fireplace dominated the living room, its stonework blackened by years of use. Dust hung thick in the air, swirling through the light from the window. Emma wrinkled her nose. "Smells like Grandpa," Daniel said softly, almost to himself. She glanced at him. His face had changed, less forced, more thoughtful. They hadn't seen their grandfather in over a decade. He died alone in this house. A neighbor found him slumped in a chair near the dock. Emma set her backpack down and walked toward the kitchen. Cabinets hung slightly open, their hinges corroded with time. The refrigerator hummed softly, though she could have sworn the power had been shut off years ago. When she opened it, the light flickered, but nothing was inside except a single jar mason filled with something cloudy and dark. She shut the door quickly. Daniel was upstairs testing light switches. "No service," he called out. "Figures." "Same here," she said, checking her phone. No signal, just one bar that came and went like a dying breath. Outside, the lake reflected the bruised colors of the sunset. For a moment, it looked almost peaceful. But as Emma stood on the porch, watching the still surface, she heard it. A faint, almost imperceptible sound. A whisper. She froze. The sound was too soft to make out, but it was rhythmic, like a single breath caught on the wind. It came from the lake. Probably the wind, she told herself. The water didn't move. Not a single ripple. "Hey," Daniel said behind her, making her jump. "Don't wander off. The dock looks ready to collapse." "Yeah," she said, forcing a laugh. "No plans to swim." They unpacked in silence. The sun sank lower, and the light in the cabin shifted to a dim amber color. Shadows stretched long across the floor, and the boards creaked even when they didn't move. Emma picked the smaller bedroom, the one with a window facing the lake, and dropped her duffel bag on the bed. The mattress exhaled a puff of stale air. When she opened the nightstand drawer, she found a single photograph. Her grandfather, standing on the dock, a fishing pole in one hand. But behind him, in the water, a shape was faintly visible. A shape that wasn't a reflection. She turned the photo over. Scrawled in shaky handwriting were 4 words. "Don't listen to it." Her fingers went cold. "Emma?" Daniel called from downstairs. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," she said automatically, but her eyes lingered on the photo. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the pines. The lake remained perfectly still. And just as she set the picture down, she heard it again, this time clearer. It was her name. Emma. Her blood turned to ice. She backed away from the window, her heartbeat thudding in her ears. She wanted to scream for Daniel, but the sound of her name, that soft, smooth whisper, slid through the glass like smoke. She forced herself to look at the water. The lake was still, black, staring back. End of Chapter 1. The Cabin.
The Whispering Lake, Chapter 2. A Warning in Town. Morning came gray and cold. A thin layer of mist hovered above the surface of Blackthorn Lake, as if the water were quietly exhaling. Emma stood at the window wrapped in an oversized sweater, clutching the chipped mug Daniel had found in the cupboard. The coffee inside was bitter and burnt, but it helped warm her shaking hands. She hadn't slept well. The whispering had stopped sometime after 3 a.m., but not before it crept into her dreams. She remembered standing barefoot on the dock in the fog. The lake called her name, not screamed, not begged, whispered, like a friend coaxing a secret from her lips. When she woke, her feet were freezing, even though she'd never left the bed. Daniel clattered around the kitchen, trying to sound upbeat. "We should head into town," he said. "Get some groceries, flashlights, maybe some cell service if we're lucky." Emma nodded, grateful for the excuse to leave the cabin. Before stepping outside, she glanced back at the photograph she'd found last night, the one with her grandfather on the dock and the faint, unexplainable shape behind him. She'd shoved it into her jacket pocket. A part of her wanted to throw it into the lake. Another part couldn't let it go. The truck coughed to life after 2 tries. As they bounced down the narrow dirt road, the trees loomed overhead, bending toward each other like eavesdropping giants. Neither spoke much. Emma kept glancing into the mirror, half expecting to see someone walking behind them in the woods. The town of Harrow's End was barely more than a cluster of old buildings hugging a single main road. A gas station, a diner, a hardware store, and a small church with a tilted steeple. It was the kind of place where time didn't pass so much as it lingered. Daniel parked in front of the gas station. A wooden sign creaked on its rusty chain, and the place smelled faintly of gasoline and wet earth. A bell over the door jingled as they entered. Inside, an old man sat behind the counter, thick glasses perched on the end of his nose, a small black and white television buzzing behind him. The station was lined with dusty shelves, canned goods, fishing lures, and yellowing magazines. Everything felt old. "Morning," Daniel said, forcing a friendly tone. The man looked up, and something shifted in his expression the moment he saw them. His gaze flicked to Emma, then to the window. "You're not from around here." "No," Daniel said. "Our grandfather's cabin on Blackthorn Lake. We're just here for a bit." "The lake," Daniel laughed awkwardly. "Yeah, we just inherited the place. Thought we'd stay for a while, fix it up." "You shouldn't stay there." The words were quiet but sharp, cutting through the room. Daniel blinked. "Excuse me?" He leaned forward. His glasses caught the fluorescent light, hiding his eyes. "You should leave. Tonight, if you can. Don't sleep by that water." Emma felt a prickle crawl up her arms. "Why?" she asked softly. He hesitated, glancing toward the door as if the lake might overhear. "That place remembers. It remembers every name it takes." The television crackled with static. A gust of wind rattled the windows. For a moment, it felt colder inside than out. Daniel tried to lighten the mood with a laugh. "Look, we appreciate the warning, but it's just a lake. A creepy one, sure, but we'll be fine." He didn't smile. "How many did you hear?" Emma froze. "What?" "The whisperings. If you've stayed even one night, you've heard them. Some folks only hear one. Some hear more." She swallowed. "I heard my name." His jaw tightened. "Then it's already started." The room fell silent, except for the faint hum of the old refrigerator. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, clearly done with the conversation. "We'll just grab what we need." They moved through the aisles, tossing flashlights, batteries, and canned food into a basket. But Emma kept glancing back at the counter. The old man was still staring at the door, hands trembling, like someone who'd already seen what was waiting for them. When they went to pay, he slipped something across the counter, a small bundle wrapped in red cloth. "What's this?" Daniel asked. He didn't meet their eyes. "Salt and a mirror. Put it by the door. It won't stop it, but it might slow it down." "Slow what down?" He didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on Emma. "Don't look at the water if it calls again." They stepped outside into the pale daylight. Emma clutched the bundle in her hand, the cloth slightly damp and smelling faintly of iron. A chill breeze swept down the empty street. No one else was around. The whole town felt like it was holding something back. Back in the truck, Daniel blew out a breath. "Well, that was fun." "He wasn't joking," Emma said. He glanced at her. People around here are probably full of ghost stories. It's just small-town superstition." Emma didn't answer. Her hand was still curled around the salt and mirror like a lifeline. As they drove back, she caught sight of a missing person poster nailed to a tree at the edge of town. The picture was sun-faded, but the headline was clear. Missing, Lucas Peterson, last seen near Blackthorn Lake. The date was only 6 months ago. End of Chapter 2, A Warning in Town. When they returned to the cabin, the mist had thickened over the lake. The air was heavier now, dense, like it had been waiting for them to come back. Emma stepped onto the porch and swore she heard something brush against the dock. A voice rose from the water, soft and close. Emma. This time, it didn't sound far away. It sounded like it was standing at the edge of the lake. The Whispering Lake. Chapter 3. The First Night. By the time the truck crunched to a stop in front of the cabin, the sky had already turned the color of bruised steel. Fog drifted across the lake like smoke, swallowing the dock whole. The water was silent, too silent, and Emma couldn't shake the feeling that it was listening. Daniel was humming as he carried bags inside, trying to keep things normal. But Emma's eyes were on the water. Even from the porch, she thought she saw a single ripple move outward from the center of the lake, as if something had just slipped beneath the surface. She gripped the bundle the old man had given them, the salt and the small mirror wrapped in red cloth. The fabric felt colder than before, almost damp, though it hadn't been wet when he handed it to her. "Hey," Daniel said inside. "You standing out there all night?" Emma forced herself to step in and close the door behind her. The cabin smelled of old wood and something faintly sweet, like rotting pine needles. Daniel had lit the small fireplace, and the weak glow pushed the shadows into the corners, but it wasn't enough to shake the unease. They unpacked in silence. Daniel found an old radio, but couldn't get it to pick up any station. Emma lined the salt along the threshold, just like the old man had said. She propped the small mirror against the inside of the door, facing outward. Daniel smirked, but didn't stop her. "Next thing you know, you'll be hanging garlic in the windows," he joked. "Shut up," she said softly, but there was no real bite in her voice. Dinner was canned soup, eaten with plastic spoons in front of the fire. It should have felt cozy. It didn't. Every creak of the floorboards made her tense. Every gust of wind made her eyes flick to the window. And always, behind it all, was the lake. Even with the door closed, it felt like the water was pressing against the cabin, waiting. "You've been quiet," Daniel said between spoonfuls. "What's going on in that head of yours?" Emma stared into the flames. That man in town was serious. Daniel sighed. He knew something. Did you see the way his face changed when we said Blackthorn Lake? He was terrified. People here love their ghost stories. It's how small towns work. Remember that abandoned house near school? How everyone said a witch lived there? She looked at him, dead serious. This isn't like that. Something in her tone silenced him. He set the spoon down, rubbing his temple. "Okay, let's say for a second it's real. What then?" Emma glanced toward the door. "We don't answer it." He frowned. "Answer what?" Before she could respond, the sound came again. Soft, faint, sliding between the cracks in the walls. Emma. Daniel froze. "Tell me you heard that." Her breath caught in her chest. The whisper wasn't like wind through the trees or water against rock. It was a voice, a low human whisper that somehow carried weight, like someone speaking directly against her ear. "Emma, come outside." The fire popped loudly. Both of them jumped. Daniel stood quickly. "Someone's messing with us." But when he opened the door, there was nothing, just the fog. It curled around the porch like fingers, creeping toward his feet. The dock was barely visible. The lake itself was flat, black, and glassy. Emma gripped his arm. "Don't go out there." He looked at her, and for a second she saw doubt flicker behind his bravado. He shut the door slowly. The whispering stopped, but the silence it left behind felt even worse. That night, Emma lay awake in the small bedroom. The floorboards groaned with every shift of the wind. Moonlight pooled through the thin curtains, painting pale streaks across the floor. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, but the cold bit through anyway. Her phone lay on the nightstand. No signal, no clock. The battery had drained faster than usual, as if the house itself had sucked it dry. At some point, exhaustion pulled at her eyelids. She must have drifted, but not fully asleep. It was the kind of half-dreaming where reality and nightmare blur. That's when she heard it. This time, the whisper wasn't outside. Emma. It was inside the room. Her heart seized. She didn't move, didn't breathe. "Emma, come to the dock." She sat up slowly. The air was freezing, so cold that she could see her breath. The window was wide open. She was sure she'd closed it. The whisper came again, clearer. "You've already heard me. You can't pretend." She turned toward the window, but the fog outside was so dense it looked like a wall. And through it, at the edge of the dock, she saw something. A figure, pale, still, facing the cabin. Her heart pounded against her ribs like a drum. It looked like a man, but its proportions were slightly wrong. Shoulders too narrow, head tilted at an impossible angle. Its feet were bare on the wood, but there were no ripples in the water around the dock. Her throat was dry. "Daniel?" she whispered. But Daniel didn't answer. She swung her legs out of bed, her skin prickling. The figure didn't move. It only tilted its head a little more, as if listening. She stumbled down the hall. "Daniel!" she hissed again, louder. She found him in the living room, asleep on the couch, the fire burned down to embers. She shook him, panic in her grip. He woke groggy, blinking up at her. "What?" "There's someone outside," she whispered. They both crept toward the window, but when Daniel pulled the curtain back, the dock was empty, just fog and black water. There's nobody there." She wanted to argue. She wanted to scream that she'd seen it, but her mouth stayed shut. The figure had vanished. He pulled her away from the window. "Get some sleep. We'll leave tomorrow if it's really freaking you out." She nodded, but neither of them believed the lie. Something wasn't right here, and deep down, Emma knew leaving wasn't going to be that easy. As she lay back in bed, heart racing, the fog pressed closer to the cabin walls, and somewhere out on the dock, the whisper returned. Not yet, but soon. End of Chapter 3, The First Night. The Whispering Lake, Chapter 4, The Old Journal. The morning was gray again, but then again,
Emma wasn't sure she'd ever seen the sun here. Fog draped over Blackthorn Lake like a burial shroud, thick and unmoving. The air had that strange metallic chill that made the back of her neck prickle. Daniel was already outside when Emma woke, standing at the edge of the porch, hands shoved deep into his hoodie pockets. His breath came out in thin clouds. "You didn't sleep either," she said, softly, stepping up beside him. He shook his head, eyes fixed on the water. "I swear I heard something walk on the dock." Emma's heart clenched. "You heard it?" "Yeah," he said. "Wood creaking, steps, slow. But when I checked, nothing. Like it was playing with me." Neither of them mentioned the figure Emma had seen last night. The memory of it hovered between them like fog. Inside, the cabin creaked and moaned as it settled. Or maybe that was just what Emma told herself to stay calm. She made coffee while Daniel checked the truck. When he came back, his face was pale. "The engine's dead," he said. "Battery's completely drained." "But it was fine yesterday." "Yeah, I don't get it. It's like everything just dies out here." The cabin was silent, except for the faint lap of water against the dock. And under that sound, Emma swore she could hear something softer. Not quite a voice, not quite wind, a whisper just below the edge of hearing. She wrapped her sweater tighter around her body and tried to focus on something tangible, anything. That's when she noticed the small pull-down ladder in the hallway ceiling. "The attic," she murmured. Daniel followed her gaze. "What about it?" "I don't remember seeing it yesterday." He grabbed a flashlight and tugged the ladder down. It groaned in protest, like it hadn't been touched in years. A musty, wet smell drifted down, thick with the scent of mildew, and something faintly sweet, like lake water left to rot. Emma climbed up first. The attic was low and narrow, filled with old furniture draped in yellowed sheets. Sunlight pushed through a single round window, cutting pale beams through the dust. Her boots crunched on something, an old newspaper, brittle and flaking. The date, 1968. "Creepy," Daniel muttered, pulling himself up behind her. In the far corner, half buried under a moth-eaten quilt, Emma saw a small wooden chest. Its edges were warped with water damage, and the lock was rusted through. She pried it open with her fingernails. Inside were a pile of black and white photographs, the cabin, the lake, and faces she didn't recognize. The same dock, always the same dock. Some photos showed people smiling, fishing, laughing. But as the years in the photos progressed, the smiles disappeared. By the last handful, the lake was empty, and the faces were blurred, as though the water had started pulling at their outlines. And then she saw it, a leather-bound journal, its cover warped and soft from dampness. Her grandfather's name was faintly etched on the inside cover. Arthur Carter, 1967. Her hands trembled as she flipped to the first entry. June 3rd, 1967. The lake is different this year. The water is lower, but at night, I swear it's deeper than it should be. The fish are gone. It's too quiet. Marie says she hears something whispering outside. I tell her it's the wind, but I'm not sure anymore. Emma's pulse quickened as she turned the page. The handwriting became messier, the lines more frantic. July 19th, 1967. It said my name, right there on the dock. I thought it was a dream, but my feet were wet when I woke.
Marie begged me not to answer it, but it sounds like my brother. He's been dead 10 years. August 2nd, 1967. It shows you what you want. It told me I could see him again. All I had to do was step into the water. God help me, I almost did. September 11th, 1967. The lake isn't water, it's a mouth. It feeds on names, on people. Marie is gone. I heard her laughing out there in the fog last night. I think I'm next, but I won't give it what it wants. I won't. The last entry was a single line, jagged, almost carved into the page. If it whispers your name, you've already lost something. Holy shit, Daniel whispered behind her. Emma hadn't realized she was crying until her tears smeared the ink slightly. The handwriting was her grandfather's. He'd heard the whispers. He'd lost someone. And whatever had happened to Marie, their grandmother, was tied to the lake. Daniel sat back against an old trunk, rubbing his forehead. Okay, so it's not just a creepy story. He actually believed this. Emma closed the journal carefully. No, she said. He didn't believe it. He lived it. They climbed down from the attic in silence. Outside, the fog was thicker than ever. It swallowed the edges of the dock, the trees, even the horizon. The lake was no longer just part of the scenery. It was the center of everything. Later that afternoon, Emma sat on the porch, the journal open on her lap. Daniel tinkered with the dead truck engine, but kept glancing nervously at the water. Each page she reread pulled her deeper into a story that was starting to mirror their own. It shows you what you want. The line echoed in her head like a heartbeat. She thought of the whisper that had sounded like her mother's voice years ago, just before she disappeared. And that's when she heard it again. Emma, it's okay. Come home. Her blood turned to ice. That wasn't just a whisper. That was her mother's voice.